Do you think that this current government is doing enough to support the businesses that you invest in?
The government certainly does not appear to be doing enough. Maybe it's partly a British thing. I think success is viewed not as positively as it certainly might be at all.
Has Brexit been so far a positive or a negative for Britain?
I think it is difficult. I think there are so many issues just now for them to try and deal with, and people have either slowed down growth plans, maybe even lost some people along the way because they just have had to.
I'm a business owner, business founder. How do I attract capital from BGF?
I would encourage anyone who's thinking about taking investment from any institution, frankly, that's a hugely important part of the process, is to get to know. Because once you're in, you're in. Clear growth plan, ambition, focus, clarity, open to influence.
Hello and welcome to another edition of City AM's Boardroom Uncovered with me, Jon Robinson. My guest for this episode is Andy Gregory, the CEO of BGF. Set up in 2011 by a clutch of high street banks, BGF has invested almost £5 billion in around 600 businesses across the UK, with a particular focus on those outside London and the South East. So what part can BGF play in getting Britain back to growth, or are this government's policies holding them back? Without any further delay, let's dive in. Well, Andy, thank you very much for coming on Boardroom Uncovered. It's great to have you here.
No, likewise. Good to be here. Thank you.
Best place to start, I think, is can you give me a quick 30 seconds on what BGF is?
So BGF, founded back in 2011, fill a gap in the funding landscape and basically providing growth equity capital to SMEs to help them grow, regionally focused, so right across UK and Ireland, across many different sectors. We don't take control of businesses, we take a minority stake, and not just capital, we also have a lot of resource and helps those businesses grow as well.
And you've been there since the start. Looking back over that time, would you consider an organisation like BGF to be a success? Have you achieved your aims?
I think we have, and again, I'm conscious I have a rose-tinted view on it.
A little bit biased, maybe, yeah.
A little bit. I think if you were to ask our shareholders, really more importantly, the question, I think they would agree with that. It has taken time, I think, to do anything. We were established to fill a gap, and I guess the gap was there because a lot of people who were providing capital right across the country with relatively small checks all moved upscale because the economics take you there. So to try and do something really at scale right across the country, doing it at volume, that perhaps we'll come on to, is not easy. So we've had lots and lots of learnings and evolution along the way. And we've deployed now about 4.7 billion over that period. So lots of activity, backing about 620 companies. And what's been really important, and I guess why I would positively say it's been a success, is obviously in our world, you can only really measure success once an investment has been realised. So we're 14 years in. What the last few years have shown, thankfully, is that we've seen about 240 exits or so over that period. And those returns coming through right across those exits has been very good. So we're very happy that it's working as a model.
Record profits in 2024 as well because of those exits as well. I suppose that speaks to that.
Yes, I think we're very much self-sufficient. Our shareholders, who are owned by the four main UK high street banks predominantly, they've been very supportive. We have a 3 billion balance sheet, so real scale, which we can invest and recycle capital from. But I think back to your point, profitable, cash generative, paying some dividends to shareholders, it's in a good place.
BGF, used to be called Business Growth Fund. That growth element, do you think that you have actively contributed to the growth of the UK economy through your investments?
We do, and we're very, very focused on that. And when we were first set up, there was speculation, probably inevitably, that we would gradually do what everyone else has done and perhaps move away from that bit of the market and move to buyouts, buying businesses effectively, doing larger checks, moving away from that SME end of the market. And we have absolutely not done that. So that has been really important for us. And basically by backing good businesses that grow and do well, the positive impacts coming from that, which I'm sure we'll come back to, are very material. So even just a cohort of our portfolio that I referred to earlier, we'd have seen about 7 billion of revenue growth, 1 billion of additional exports, and about 27,000 additional jobs being created. So just inevitably, backing these exciting entrepreneurial businesses, they do well, the economy benefits hugely from that.
Now, if I was being a typical journalist, of course, a cynical journalist, I would say, well, you're investing into the companies, you're taking that returns, and that's going to your ultimate shareholders. How are the companies that you're actually invested in benefiting from BGF being a shareholder?
Well, just to your first point, because I can't on behalf of my shareholders, I would slightly rebut that point insofar as they committed $2.5 billion on day one, so it's a huge sum of money. We've not actually drawn all of that down, we didn't have to, as we became more successful in recycling the capital. So back to the point, we have paid some dividends. They have been quite modest, so we've basically hence being able to recycle the capital and actually back businesses with $4.7 billion of capital over that period. So I think credit to the shareholders for providing that evergreen balance sheet that we can invest from. In terms of how we support the companies that we back, so a large part of it is the capital itself. Most of what we do, we call growth, and these would be established businesses, so profitable or very, very close to being profitable, typically first-time founder or a family business or a bit of both. And typically they will have choices. They are good businesses. They don't really need to do anything. And part of us being created is to try and stimulate demand in the marketplace. So they might do nothing. Quite often our biggest competition is they actually choose to do nothing and just carrying on growing at a much more modest pace perhaps. Or maybe it's a small debt raise or private equity or a trade sale. So the opportunity for us with that balance sheet and the scale that we have and the resources that we have is to make entrepreneurs aware there's a different path they can go down. And by that, I mean they can retain control. So it's really, really important. And there's lots of nervousness among entrepreneurs about losing control of their business. Understandably, if they've put all that emotional energy, it's their baby, very thoughtful about bringing an institution into their shareholding base. So we need to be very good at that. And then why would they take capital from us? So I guess answering it from, perhaps their perspective, I think they would say we can then really accelerate and support their growth. So the capital can support and accelerate that growth. We can just strengthen the balance sheet. They can use that capital, but much, much more than that are the resources that we can provide alongside that in terms of how they can build their strategy, how they can build their team, executive, non-executive, how we can help them digital wise in terms of their IP strategy, with their export strategy, is much, much more than just the capital. So I think, and our greatest and frankly most credible advocates are the entrepreneurs that we have backed over the years.
Now, in my world, in business journalism, there's an awful lot made of successful exits, 4 times multiple of the investments. All of this is a real success. You get the press release and you see the coverage and all the rest of it. Obviously, nothing is talked about for those investments that don't go well. But all of those hundreds of companies that BGF has invested in over time, you're going to have some bad ones there. What do you take from those examples that you can learn from?
A huge amount. So we touched on it earlier. Over the last 14 years, we've evolved a lot. We've learned an awful lot along the way. And critically importantly, we are still absolutely learning an awful lot along the way. We had all of our investors, so we're not a large business, probably in comparison to many of the CEOs you get in this podcast, the businesses they have. But in our world, at 200 people, that actually is quite large. And we had 100 investors altogether just a few weeks ago. A very important part of that gathering is looking at what has not gone so well. And let's really learn from that. And there are lots of lessons, frankly. An awful lot of it is people. We are backing people. And that's an obvious thing to say for any investor. They're obviously they are backing a management team to execute. But as I said earlier, for us as a minority investor, we're not in control. We are backing incumbent management team, the entrepreneurs, to keep on going. So we need to make sure we're backing the right entrepreneurs. Not just the right entrepreneurs who've got the right mindset, who are open to influence, and we can work with them and help them, as I said earlier, in terms of how they build their team out or whatever it may be. So I think when that doesn't go so well, and we've perhaps not quite judged that correctly, that would be one of the more obvious themes.
Well, we've got some quick fire questions for you now, Andy. You ready? What was your first job?
I think it's the most interesting one, I would say, is what we'd called back home tatty hawking.
Okay, you're going to have to translate that.
You don't really want to know that much about it, and it doesn't really happen anymore particularly. So potato picking.
Right.
So it's the glamour of being in sort of October half-term holiday, which in Scotland actually was called the tatty holiday, potato tatty, obviously, and the glamour of being in a field in the cold, in the damp, normally being shouted at by a farmer.
Who inspires you?
The more I thought about that, is my mum, actually, and not for any business reasons. She
She's great at investing in regional companies. Is that what you're saying?
I'm sure she could have been. I'm sure she could have been if she only should have got the phone call. Much more about sort of mindset and approach to life.
What's the best thing about your job?
I think because of the volume that we do and the types of businesses that we interact with and the breadth, it is people, and it's the entrepreneurs that we have frankly the privilege of working with is off the charts. So we're backing up to 50 companies a year, all doing something really quite different, something exciting. I have long worked out and understood my own sort of behaviours and profile. They are very different, and that's why they can do what they do, and the innovation, the drive, the belief, the creativity that goes with that, and to be able to work with them across lots of different sectors is fantastic.
If you were Prime Minister for the day, Andy, what would you do?
I would have a day of real celebration of entrepreneurship.
You think they're not celebrated enough in the UK?
Nowhere near enough.
Forgotten about, maybe?
I think so, and I think maybe it's partly a British thing. I think success is viewed not as positively as it certainly might be at all. I think the importance of what scale up businesses. I mentioned earlier the businesses that we've backed and the impact they've had on the economy, but the impact just more broadly that scale ups have in terms of the disproportionate positive impact they have on employment growth and everything really in terms of tax and innovation and exports is just huge, and it is hard. It is so hard, and I often speak about what we've seen in our portfolio. But if you were to go back over the last 9 years, Brexit onward, and the number of different challenges they've had, and it's not it's hard to start a business, but it's really hard to then really meaningfully scale that business up, and particularly in more uncertain times, which obviously we've had a lot of over that last 9 years.
You mentioned the B word, Brexit. Is that still having an effect on what the industries that you're involved in, the investing, being able to invest in companies in the UK?
I wouldn't say it's having a direct impact on what we are or not able to do, but I would say, as I mentioned earlier, we've currently got about 360 companies in the portfolio, so I meet them occasionally. We often survey them. I also am quite often allowed out of my sort of ivory tower, and what's great is get to meet some of the businesses that we are potentially going to be investing in. And it's very, very interesting to get a sense from them as to what's on their minds and what's concerning them. And even one in London just a few weeks ago, Brexit was a large part of the conversation. There was still the impact that was having to their mind, in terms of, I guess talent particularly, ease of doing business with Europe. So we are very active and very happy with our deployment levels, but there's definitely a residual impact on the economy and SMEs.
And from your seat as CEO of BGF, has Brexit been so far a positive or a negative for Britain?
It's hard to measure, I would say. And obviously with so many different companies in so many different sectors and different regions, and in Ireland as well, it's very mixed. So there will have been, and we have seen some winners as well as some losers in that.
More losers than winners, do you think?
We've not quantified it because I think it'd be very, very hard because of all the other challenges that have happened in terms of inflation, energy wars, pandemics, etc., tariffs. It'd be very hard to isolate the Brexit aspect. I think those people who are much smarter than me with an economist perspective probably would imagine it's more negative than positive. I
suppose that has been the narrative, hasn't it? That has been quite a big factor on slowing UK growth, and it's slowed in the last quarter. And that's been going on for a long time. There's been this narrative of broken Britain. Is that what you see? Do you agree with that narrative?
So we just did I mentioned surveys earlier. We did a survey of the portfolio. So, we've got views as to what we think is happening. Far, far better to hear that firsthand. And we sit on the board of most companies that we're backing. So we do have a good insight. But we had a very strong response rate to the survey. And whilst individuals, so CEOs and chairs of the businesses that we've backed, about their own independent prospects, their confidence in terms of the broader market backdrop, in terms of ease of doing business, has definitely been deteriorating over the last year.
It feels like the last almost 10 years, it's been Brexit, then it's COVID, cost of living crisis. We're just over a year into a new Labour government. Very difficult budget last year. As we're speaking today, we've got a budget later in a couple of weeks. Do you think that this current government is doing enough to support the businesses that you invest in? Are they on your side?
I think so again, we did cover that as part of the survey. So I think the sentiment and the intent is there, and we engage with Labour governments on the way in. And I think definitely a very strong sense of intent and desire, because it is obviously obvious that, back to again the heart of your question, the UK economy desperately needs the private business sector to be growing. It's so important. What the survey comes back with quite clearly, though, is a sentiment from entrepreneurs that the government certainly does not appear to be doing enough, and probably also, and very importantly, a sentiment, and perhaps recognising the importance of entrepreneurial businesses, SMEs, scale-ups in the UK.
They're not empathetic enough to the challenges.
That would be the sense they would have.
And is that your sense as well?
Well, I think their view would be much more important than mine, because they're the ones who are driving the business. To an extent, I think it is difficult. I think there are so many issues just now for them to try and deal with. And I think some of the things that have happened, employers, NI,
national insurance,
in a certain way, that's national insurance, and that has definitely some of our businesses, particularly those inevitably that are much more resource in terms of number of people, it has had a real impact. And people have either, slowed down growth plans, maybe even, lost some people along the way because they just have had to. So business is clearly not some amorphous mass that can just be, gone for tax. It's just so important that we are working together to help support the entrepreneurs. And as I said, I think a lot of it, there's partly concerns over tax and tax going forward as well. But I think a large part of that, I also believe, is sentiment. And it's a combination of people wanting to feel there is a country working together to support entrepreneurs that is so important, and linked to that, a sense of stability that they can take to make longer-term decisions. It's difficult for any business to make long-term decisions in an unstable backdrop. But for a small business, making a big bet on do they open another factory or an overseas, it's huge. It could be sort of existential decision.
Do you have confidence that the government is on the right track with its policies? Now, we've got the budget coming up. Your homework is about to be marked pretty damn quickly. Yeah. I appreciate that, but do you have confidence in them?
I think this is important, an important budget, put it that way. And I guess
he puts delicately.
We will find out, as you said, very, very soon. And I would really hope there is sufficient reassurance to business that they can, carry on and plan and, commit to growth plans.
I'd like to end on this, Andy, if it's all right. Imagine I'm a business owner, business founder. How do I attract capital from BGF? What do I need to do? Is it a glitzy PowerPoint, slide deck maybe?
It is definitely not that. Definitely not that. So many of the businesses that we back, probably a very significant proportion, we will have got to know them and they get to know us over a period of time. So that could be several years. So it's much more about getting to know us. And I would encourage anyone who's thinking about taking investment from any institution, frankly, that's a hugely important part of the process, is to get to know. Because once you're in, and we're a minority investor, we can't force anything to happen. So from our perspective, we really want to be as confident as we can that it's the right relationship for both parties. So I think time is very important, getting to know us, meeting companies that we've already backed, and for us getting to know the individuals and the company, clear growth plan, ambition, focus, clarity, open to influence. Mentioned it earlier. I think really important, backing smaller businesses with capital to do something really quite ambitious. Often that does need an evolution of the team to deliver that.
Fantastic. Andy, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much.